How about that?
So what we want to do is we're going to talk about rapid analytics, and it's a panel discussion. So I'm going to moderate, but really what we want is to have really a discussion as well with the folks in the audience, right? So that's why I'm actually encouraging everybody to come closer, and it's great that we can accommodate everybody on one side. So that's very cool. So there's no slides other than the contact info of the folks who are in the panel. So if you want to, you can take a picture of that at some point if you're interested. And
I don't think they're interested.
Get in touch easily, and that's about it. So it's rapid analytics. We'll start with some questions from me, but really then I also want to get questions from you. And if there's also insights or thoughts or things that you want to share, or your experiences, then I think that would be terrific. And we can all kind of benefit from that conversation. So this is really about having a conversation with this group. And I think actually we've got really good participation for late on a Friday. I mean, sure, but
it's all right. Those are free Doritos.
Go ahead, you can sit.
It's okay.
There you go.
I'll take the empty.
Yeah, you get a benefit for coming up front. It's like back in school, right? Nobody wants to sit in the front row. Yeah. No. Shamu's not going to splash you or anything like that. Don't worry.
Next time you're bringing up Doritos for everything.
I have more, but only the first two rows. So okay. So you can do that. Come visit our booth. All right. So the only thing I really wanted to make sure I got right, because most of this is going to be dialogue and free form. But I wanted to get the bios right, so I did print out the bios. So I'm going to introduce our panel here, so you know who you're talking to. And so Boundy is here to my immediate right, and Graham is a senior data architect, and he is the co-founder of Project X 11 years ago?
2005, July 2005.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's you. Graham's a beautiful mind guy. He's a data architect. He's been a bit of a Teradata guru, and working with MicroStrategy for somewhere around 15 years. Got about 30 years of experience in the IT industry, and been part of the data warehousing and BI space since its inception back in the 90s, right? So he's been involved for quite a bit of time, and a couple of things that I know Graham is quite passionate about is being kind of that bridge between business and technology, right, which is a critical function, and also the application of rapid principles with his clients and in order to be successful in the BI space. So that's Graham. Daniel Coe is next to Graham. Daniel's nickname is Data Dan, which I think is a fantastic handle. I really like it, and you'll get to know why. Here, let's bring some chairs right over so you don't feel too left out or far away. We have good participation, plus there's some more spots in the front here. So Dan works for InfoTech Research Group, which is kind of like it's a research organization like Gartner, for instance. So he's got access to a lot of industry best practice and trends and things that are going on right now. So Dan's quite dialed in there. He's got a lot of experience in data warehousing, analytics, data science, big data, and geographic information systems. Dan's also formerly of Project X, and has works in telecom, automotive, utilities, and so on. Dan's got a Bachelor of Science from U of T with a major in molecular genetics, which I don't even know what that is.
It's just data.
It's just data. That's right. It's just data. And next to Dan is Jeff Kurys, who's Jeff has been at Bell for around 10 years. He's in the strategic deployment of BI at Bell. He's got a finance background and has been working pretty much in the last 5 years focused on driving BI adoption across Bell, and also helping to build the data-driven culture within Bell. He's been a speaker at MicroStrategy World and been involved in the space quite a bit. Currently working on a project where he's launching
guys are involved in it as well.
It's okay. Thank you. But really, the brains comes through the BI team at Bell. And then, last but not least, is Ritchie. Connor is he's a product manager, sort of by trade, focused on that for the last 10 years. Last 5 years, he's spent as a Scrum team product owner, and he's focused on, and so the Scrum team is focused on BI and data warehouse, delivering data solutions for the 407 ETR, which is, we all know the 407 ETR company we love. We have a kind of a love-hate relationship with, right?
That might be true about Bell too.
Yeah, we're the two most hated companies here.
But we can't live without it, is the thing, right?
Yeah.
We're still commodities.
And Connor, prior to that, worked at SimCorp. He's got a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from U of T. And a lot of people thought it was Connor McDavid actually that came.
It's not.
But, Connor actually, he too scored 4 goals in his first professional hockey appearance, but due to other mitigating circumstances, now only coaches his kids' hockey teams.
Tough job.
Apparently that's an Algerian hockey league. Though.
The Algerian
yeah,
professional
yeah.
hockey league.
I'm huge in Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the panel. Now we have microphones, but as I said, if we can get away without the microphones and just have more of an organic discussion, then we'll do that. If not, we'll pass the microphones along, and I'll grab one and bring it out into the audience for folks to participate. So as we said, the topic is rapid analytics. I'm your host here. My name is Ted Aslanidis. I work for Project X. So I'm in charge of operations and delivery. And in my background, I've done a lot of different things in the consulting space, including supply chain, performance management, mergers and integration. Worked in the tech sector as well for Celestica and BlackBerry and so on. So I'll be kind of moderating the panel, but also here to encourage and help the audience participate as well. All right, so that's the plan. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of start off by giving everybody a chance to talk a little bit about the topic of rapid analytics. And to be quite transparent, we chose rapid analytics as the topic because we didn't want to narrow ourselves to any specific methodology. The term rapid, although it does have some kind of specific meaning to it as well, but in terms of thinking, it's more of what are the different things, the different principles, the different approaches. It's not just a strict adherence to a specific methodology. So I'll start basically by maybe going one at a time and asking the panel to tell us what's your interpretation and thinking about rapid analytics as a starting point, and then we'll get into some more questions and dialogue. All right, Graham, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I'll start with the database answer. It depends. Rapid, if you're a glacier, is not very fast. If you're a small organization who wants to see things happen quickly, it can be very fast. And most of our clients fall somewhere in between. I'll pick that up. Most of our clients fall somewhere in between that continuum of, I need to do things quickly. Well, what do you mean by quickly? Well, it's relative to really gauging who's ready to do things quickly in your organization. You might have, I think someone else in another talk talked about, in fact, the first talk, it was the Loblaws guy. He said, you got to have CEO or C-suite buy-in, you've got to have IT buy-in, you've got to have business buy-in, and you've got to have the tools to do the job. So those 4 things really kick in to say, can I do this thing rapidly? And a lot of it has to be around, what do you mean by rapid? Is it reasonable to say we can do this in 3 months, 6 months, given that we have all these 4 factors to deal with? And along with that, all the challenges of what's the data we're dealing with, what's the business problem we're trying to solve, what's the end goal? So I think it's that depends relative kind of thing. But the bottom line is somebody up in the C-suite is saying, you need to do it with less money, you need to do it with less resources, you need to do it as quickly as you possibly can, because I've got customers who expect to see this thing out in front of them that's our challenge, is trying to balance all of those competing issues. Dan?
Oh, the way I make sense of Rapid BI is that, so I'm taking the people angle, and also I'm taking the data angle. So people-wise, when you look at the BI organization, it has to be a high-performance team. So we are talking about diversity of opinion. You will have business, you will have technology people working in that team, so that you have a cross overview to make sense of the data. And another thing I would like to point out is that, so when you look at that high-performance team, it's really about, it's almost like a startup culture, because you want to innovate.
People are having trouble.
Hello.
Karaoke will be going on later.
I like that echo. All right. So again, so I'm talking about the people organization. So in a BI team, essentially you will have you want to build a high performance BI team, and you will organize your team, along that line of objective. You want to have business people. You want to have data people. You want to have technology people. They will be providing different aspects of the data. That's the way you make sense of the data. And a lot of high performance BI team I work with, they tend to be having a very good team culture. And I see them as almost like the Silicon Valley startup. So they do have very high energy, and also they are pursuing the same goal. And they see the big picture, and they are fitting themselves into that big picture. So think of it that way. So build your people around having a big picture. Make sure that they can perform, so that you can have work with BI at the end of the day. From a data perspective, what I'm seeing is that a lot of data is being offloaded to the business end users, and that's very good, because as an IT organization, I want to focus on data architecture. I want to focus on the data warehouse infrastructure instead of doing the analysis, fulfilling a number of information requests. Who's having a long queue of information requests right now?
Who does?
Okay, you guys are awesome. Okay, so I should talk to you. Usually people are having a long queue of information requests. So and IT should be focusing on modeling the data, making sure that you are onboarding new data, and also you are making sense of the data. And when you look at the business, they should be focusing on analyzing the data, play around with the data, and get some insight out of it. So that's the whole concept of agile rapid BI. Essentially you are empowering your BI users to use your data, and then you are just doing hands-off to those business users.
Is that it? So I'll just work on building, I guess, on some of what Daniel and Graham said, rather than defining it all over again. There's probably a few things that we think you should probably keep in mind, or you just have to get adjusted to. One is, like everybody I guess says, is failing is okay. So if you're going to do it rapidly and quick, it's okay to do it wrong. That's fine. I remember we launched, I think, a marketing operations Unica platform. We went in to experiment it, to use a few things, and I think within the first half an hour I was in there, I deleted all the user profiles or security privileges for everybody in the environment. It was a mistake. We got it back up and running in probably like 20 minutes, no harm, no foul, and we moved on, right? So it's okay to kind of go in there and break things. And then the other piece was, we sort of got a quote from one of our HR people out of everything, which is, for the sales, there's probably not very many salespeople in the room here now, but salespeople will walk around and knock on doors, and they'll probably knock on 100 doors. They only make maybe 2 or 3 sales, so use the same approach with, I guess, the analytics. You'll go around and you'll get a bunch of hypotheses, or you may come to some different conclusions, and you're not always going to be right. People aren't always going to adopt it, but just at least try and come to those things and see who kind of moves forward with it. It's completely fine to not always see success. So the idea is just to keep iterating different versions or different answers, and just throwing them out there to see where it sticks or who it sticks with. But I'll send it off to Connor here to finish it off.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said. This is baseball. You're going to strike out more than you get on base, and so you have to try try a bunch of different things, try different techniques. a concept that we've introduced at 407, or that we're trying to introduce, is this distinction between quick and dirty analytics and more of our institutional reporting, and creating a path to migrate from that first try to analyze something, to look at some data, and then take it. If it's serious, it's something we need to replicate, it's something we want to see on an ongoing basis, we'll treat it differently. But that first shot, that should be not too expensive, it should be not too difficult. And I also realize it's very hard to go fourth, because by the end, there's very little left to say.
You get to start first on the next question.
Oh, good. Okay. Give me the next one.
So, well, no, actually, it's interesting. We just talked a lot about the ability to fail, or being okay to make mistakes, right? So, how many folks in the audience, in your organization, would you say that it's okay to make mistakes in doing project beyond project? Few. Right? Yeah.
For how long?
It's tough. So,
How many mistakes before you get to something where they say, okay, now let's see something? How many iterations can you get through before somebody says, okay, wait a second, you've made a few mistakes, okay, granted, now do we have something to show for it?
That's the tough part, right? It's something that we talk about a lot. So, full disclosure, I feel like this is a confession. We're a full agile IT shop. We do Scrum development, so 2-week iterations, not just for BI, for all of our development. We say that we need to stop starting new things and start finishing things, and that often is the challenge, right? I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's the challenge that we face. You want to try a bunch of different things, but we also, it's hard to finish them if you have this, you become a little bit, you have a bit of an attention deficit disorder when you do rapid analytics, because you're always chasing the next shiny thing, right? And you have to make sure that you finish the first thing. And like, your point's very well made about that. That's a question we get a lot.
So I had a conversation with a guy at Shopify about a year and a half ago. There was this random thing. He happened to work at Shopify, and we were having this conversation over a beer at his cottage. And I didn't know he worked at Shopify before I went up to the cottage, but there it was. Anyway, and he's telling me that they roll out things almost hourly, just like, okay, we're going to put something in production. What is it? Well, it's this next thing. Well, how do you know it's going to work? What kind of impact is it going to have on the rest of the environment? And all of these kinds of questions that I have, because I come from, the gray hair, long line of people who said, no, you got to test it over the zoo, you got to go through all these gates before you get anywhere near production. And these guys are just like, no, we step it through and we do these different things and we roll it into production, and it's just, there it is. What if something goes wrong? Well, we just roll another thing in to fix that thing. And we roll another thing in to fix that thing. I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. How do you maintain that from an operational perspective? But apparently they do. So, I don't know. It's a weird thing to start thinking about, is how you do that. Change in the environment.
It strikes me when you talk about this that this is has to do with the company culture, right? The fault tolerance, the openness to fail and learn as you go through. So I kind of turn to the panel. I know who wants to talk about this first, but what about culture and culture change?
So I think the culture is very important, because when you look at the major financial institutions, the major banks, major insurance companies, they are spinning off a fintech division, and operation for that fintech division is totally different. It's almost like running a startup. So that's why they have the new thinking of, keep trying, keep pushing the limit, and making sure that you are delivering value over and over again. And also they are leveraging, external knowledge. They are leveraging external data. So I think the culture is building a big part of it, and people has to see the culture that they are in, and they want to define the future state, and they should move on to that future state of being more open.
Just to add to that, culture to me it's more than just people. It's also, I mean, we've benefited from this. It's physical environment as well. So one thing that we did as a company, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, was we made a major real estate investment in realigning where people sat and their physical environment. So our team, which has quite a broad scope, we're responsible for the enterprise data warehouse. We do all of our ETL work. We do all of our BI work in MicroStrategy. We sit all together in one room, same office every day, glass walls all around, sticky notes everywhere. We've got our own, I don't know, 60-inch TV that's a touch screen that we can share on and do these things. So we have no phones, which also helps. And this physical environment helps us collaborate, and I mean, that's a huge thing that management has to take a bit of a leap of faith up front and say, yes, we're going to invest in this big real estate change. Like, that's a hard thing to do, right? Give me X amount of money. I'll tell you the number after. I can't say it because I'm being recorded. But give me X amount of money for this real estate change. And we see huge benefits, not only in how quickly we can do work, but in team culture, in spirit. Like, we're mostly happy. Project X has had a consultant working with us for, I don't know, the better part of the last 4 months, let's say. I'd love him to take a blind survey and see if he's happier working at our shop than other places.
You don't have to take a
He
blind
doesn't
survey.
really-
We had a conversation with him just last week where he did a lunch and learn for us on what's happening with the agile environment there. And he's like, he loves it. Thinks it's a great environment.
Yeah. We do a lot of jokes as well.
Yeah, our biggest challenge is going to be pulling him out of there.
Yeah.
In that agile environment, one of the things that they stated was because your deliverables as a developer are short and well defined, there's less concern about being always behind schedule, or because you've got this long set of work that you have to do and you don't know if you're going to hit your targets. Instead, you're given like, okay, you've got 2 weeks to complete this thing. Can you complete this thing, or 3 weeks, or whatever the time frame is? And throughout that time, on a daily basis, you're saying, yeah, I'm going to make it. Yeah, I'm going to make it. Yeah, I'm going to make it. And that is a lot less stressful than I've got 3 months to do this thing, but I got to haul into this meeting, and I got to haul into that meeting, and then I got to change the scope, and all those things that happen, and then you don't hit your target on whatever that deliverable is. So that's one of the things that came up as being good for them. Now, on the flip side, you've got the manager who's putting all these things together and creating that work plan and trying to figure out what all of those sequence of events are, prioritizing all those deliverables. I'm looking at that and I'm going, that must be a horrendous job.
It's not. It's
Okay,
not.
tell us why.
You know what? Once you get into a groove, so I think it's probably like teaching a class for the first time. It takes you a little bit of time to set up your lesson plan. And I mean, I don't know if anybody, I come from a family of teachers, so I'm a huge disappointment being in the business world. But you set up your lesson plan, and then like the second year you give that course, it's a lot easier, right? We've got certain things fine-tuned. We look at a quarter at a time. We've gotten really good as a team, and that's where, like Daniel was talking about, team culture and cross-functional people. Like, it's not just me doing that splitting. It's a team effort. I'm accountable for it, and I'm responsible for it. But we all share that responsibility to some extent as a team. And I'm talking about team members, developers, the people who do the QA. They're all the same people. So it makes it gets really easy after a while. You fine-tune it, and there's something very comfortable about it. And the beauty of the 2 weeks is we have an iteration, we deliver a feature, the iteration is up, and then it feels like, I don't know if you guys remember that time between semesters where like you don't have any work to do, and you feel so good because you finished your last exam, and there's literally, like, there's nothing you can do. You haven't started the next course yet. You're in this like great zone where there's nothing to worry about. And we get that every 2 weeks. You go home on Friday, you finished something. It's going to go to production early next week through change management processes, and it's done. And we'll talk about the next thing on Monday. And that is a very healthy, fun way to go through life.
Daniel's taking resumes at the end of this session. So I'm gonna ask you, Jeff, in a second about Bell and culture as well. But I just wanted to ask Daniel, just pull on one more thing
Connor?
Connor.
Yeah.
One more thing, pardon me. Connor, you talked cell phones in committing to this 2-week cycle and so on. What did it take to make that leap of faith actually happen?
I don't know, because it happened before I arrived.
Okay.
It was something that, our management, our leadership in IT management, which is still the same, our CIO has been there for 6 years, and our senior director that is sort of the lieutenant, he's been there that same period of time. And they just were looking at the work, they were looking at the level of transparency to our business, and they were saying there's got to be a better way we can do this. And so they said, let's try something. And they got buy-in, I think at the board level, to make a significant investment both at the real estate that I mentioned, but also in our tool suite and the software tools that we went out and bought. And it just totally changed things. So I can't really answer that question.
All right,
It's
so we
little
have a
bit
model, Connor, with you that's kind of taken that leap and moved forward and has gone like full into the agile and Scrum.
Jeff's going to talk now, and he's going to say that everything I said doesn't work, and I have to give you some context. We have an office of 450 people, and we all sit in the same place, and that is a huge benefit. It's a massive benefit that very hard to replicate the kind of culture we have with a really big company. So,
And so Jeff, to you in terms of now you're going through some change and evolution in this process. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about what it's taking or what it's going to take or what's happened so far from a culture change.
Yeah, it's changing, I suppose. I guess what we've created is a micro sort of environment within Bell, as opposed to staying constant with the rest of the environment. There's definitely rigid IT processes and ways of doing things which are in place and work when they need to work. We'll do the sort of things that Connor's talking about when the initiatives are 2 weeks or a week or however long they need to be. The trick is that we found is when we try to, I guess, extend that over a longer period of time, it doesn't always work. So if it's a more complex initiative that you can't break down into those smaller increments, sometimes you just get lost in the agility. So I guess the key thing to probably take from what maybe not fully educated on what you're doing, but in the sense that if the initiative lasts too long of a period, the sort of agile rapid method you kind of lose yourself in it and get a little lost. If you start changing a little too frequently over a long period of time, and you start maybe chasing your tail every once in a while, and it doesn't work. But at the same time, we're trying to find that balance between sort of the rigid older school processes and this kind of new agile approach.
Right. And so, in terms of, and this is now more of an open question, in terms of the people who outside of IT, right, who sort of hearing there's kind of a buy-in factor, and so who are the people who need to buy in? Who are the people that you need to get support or kind of change mindsets within the organization in order to be successful? Who wants to jump in?
I don't think you need to change mindsets. I think everybody's bought into the factor as long as it works. You have to grow a thick skin, maybe. You have to be used to having people doing the type of stuff that we do. People only let you know when you're wrong most of the time. They don't really let you know when you're right. So it's one of those things, if you become invisible, it's almost a compliment. So you sort of receive compliments that way. So you have to be a little more laid back and not affected by stress, I guess, just from the fact that people will jump all over you when things go wrong. But that's kind of human nature, I suppose.
There's a little bit of NIMBY involved too, right? Not in my backyard. Everybody says culture change, sure, great. Rapid results, yeah, I'd love to do it. And then you start to put something into production, and somebody on the operations side will say, "Whoa, wait a second, you've got all of these steps you have to go through before you can put this thing into my environment, because I'm the one who's going to have to take care of it after you've tossed it over the fence." Right? And so those kinds of situations you have to kind of work through and start going through all those gates. Maybe identify, okay, you did gate 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now we're into gate 5. Do we really have to do gate 5 because it doesn't make sense anymore? Or, what those kinds of situations. But again, making those kinds of changes can be quite difficult. And that's just the nature of the beast when you're dealing with large IT organizations.
Well, what
think they're comforted by the fact that it's supposed to be cheap and dirty. It's just typically probably isn't. So that's probably just leading to a place where, you know, sometimes if the requirements change too often, and you have to have the right flexibility in your resources, I suppose. So you got to imagine if there is change and failure along the way, it will take longer than originally anticipated. So you have to come from an environment where you don't have, let's say, a structured budget. You know, for us, it doesn't always work because you go in and you're asking for X amount of dollars, so I'll ask for my fixed $1 million. All of a sudden, halfway down the road, we sort of become a little agile and change things along the way, and everybody expects the course just to continue and for that funding not to change whatsoever. Sometimes there's a little rework involved, sometimes you're lucky and there's not, but you have to have the flexibility to kind of accept your mistakes and kind of pay for them as well too. So that's something that not everybody's quite used to, but the upside to it is typically you can deliver a lot faster than spending 6 months up front trying to plan what you're going to do over the next 18 months. But
And we've certainly seen situations where clients go down a path of, you know,
Ted, you've done it. You have a
monolith.
question.
So, oh, sorry. Okay. Go back to the microphone. Okay, let's use if you don't mind using the microphones. Thank you.
Sure.
So, all right, but Jeff prompted me quite appropriately. So, questions from the audience at this stage? Yeah, please.
I have a question from Tom. You were talking about being all together, sitting in one room and then working in an agile mode. Does that not isolate you from keeping up with the technology? And how do you create a balance between delivering what you have to do and being on time, being rapid, and at the same time giving the team the time to grow and train and keep up with the latest and the greatest?
Okay, so the question was, in case not everybody heard it, if you're in this isolated team environment where you're in a room, how do you keep up with the technology? And I think specifically for the team members or developers, how do they keep current? Did I get that right? Okay. The answer is that we built that into our planning. So just to dovetail on the budgeting question, we have a very different approach to budgeting. We don't have a product management organization. I mean, our product is the road. So what happens is the product owners and managers in IT kind of proxy that business role, and we present a roadmap for the next year, and we get budget for that. But part of building that roadmap is dedicating time for our people to be trained. So we have a pretty big training budget to go out and get training. And if there are things, like we also maintain a technical backlog. So our team members come up with improvement ideas that have nothing to do with business direction. There's a little bit of capacity allocated to that sort of activity. So training, technical backlog, and just like we have a very open culture. Like if one of our team members approached me or our Scrum Master and said, "Hey, I really want to learn about this, or I'd really like to develop an app, or you know, this is something I want to do. This is what I need." It's something that we would be very open to. It's just ingrained in the culture, so it happens.
Another question? Anybody have any question? Hello?
So I have a question to Connor again.
Sorry, I'm gonna pass you. I'll give you the mic.
Sure.
Yeah. So my question is to Connor again. With all you said as the IT shop that you run, it's great to hear something of that sort. But what about the companies which are in different geographies by the business sense, or how the business is spread? So how do we do something like you are doing, and how do we kind of replicate even like 50% of what you just said?
Sure, I'll answer that with this microphone that works.
I have no idea. I mean,
Let's turn to the other
Yeah.
panelists.
I have no idea.
Jeff, how would you?
We host a variety of telecommunication products that you could probably purchase. We've sort of done it by creating, I guess, locations at least in different areas, and then uniting those locations like a hub and spoke kind of model. So there's 3 or 4 different hubs, and then, of course, not to be too cliche, is that you do need the telecommunication products to help you. So whether it's, you know, creating different video conference capabilities, or just being open to picking up the phone as opposed to just always emailing and messaging and so on. Could be a generational thing at times, but still, it's just, you don't want, for us it hasn't been productive to be completely scattered everywhere, but at least some sort of sets of hubs anyways.
Yeah, so when I look at communication, so there is informal communication and formal communication. So I think in a meeting setting, video conferencing is awesome. Like we recognize people by their faces, basically. So, and by the way, my video conferencing system is working, so can so when you look at informal communication, so things like, you know, text messaging, or you know, having a group of messaging system will have a lot, because, you know, those are the coffee chats, if you will. So you need to have an environment for, you know, replicating a pantry, so that people can go there, get a coffee, and have some kind of coffee chat. In a distant environment, then you will have like messaging system, you know, going back and forth, so that people can do some gossip, if you will.
Back in the olden days. In 1998, I started working on the enterprise data warehouse at Bell. And there would be times when you would go to the airport, get on a plane, and fly to Montreal in the morning to go to a meeting in Montreal, to co-locate, and get on the same plane coming back, Rapid Air in Air Canada, flew Toronto Montreal flights, 5, 10, 15 flights a day, I don't know what it was, ridiculous numbers, and you would see 4 or 5 people on that flight, getting on that plane with you in the morning, flying to Montreal, having the meeting, flying back to Toronto at night, and it was just like, this is crazy.
That's what we meant by rapid back then, right? Was rapid
That's
air.
what rapid air, that's what we meant, exactly. And then, you know, Bell started to realize, wait a second, we're the telephone company. We can just get on a conference call here, and it's cheap for us because we own the network, so it's great. Anyway, and nowadays, you get on a conference call, and every meeting is on a conference call because somebody's in Ottawa, somebody's in Montreal, somebody's somewhere. And that's not just Bell anymore. Every client does this. And then all of a sudden, offshore comes along. And now you're doing 7 o'clock in the morning conference calls because you want to talk to India. And you're doing 9 o'clock at night conference calls because you want to talk to India again. So you're going back and forth and doing this sort of thing. And GoToMeeting and Skype and all of those things, now they work great. I mean, there's a little bit of delay. Every once in a while, sure, you spend the first 15 minutes of the phone conversation going, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? All that setup stuff. If you can get past all of that, the collaboration aspect of it is pretty good. Now, the only other aspect I would bring into it, if you are doing something like India or Poland or Bulgaria or wherever it is, you do need somebody onshore here who speaks the idiom and understands the language, because every once in a while you have to go to Hindi to get your message across. You have to go to Polish to get your message across. And I've been working at a client site where that exact thing happened. I'm in a room that's 10 feet by 13 feet with 4 or 5 other people, and there's two kinds of conversations going on. There's a couple guys in Polish talking back and forth with another guy in Poland, and there's a conversation going on with another team in India with people talking Hindi. And every once in a while you get a few like PC or project manager or some other English word popping into the conversation. You say, okay, we're talking about something related to the project as opposed to the weather. But you know, that kind of thing has to happen because of globalization. And so co-location is great, and I agree with it. It works great because it's great for team cohesion. Another anecdote, then I'll get the mic to somebody else. In 2009, I went to India for 15 days because we'd spent 6 months on a project working toward a deadline and weren't getting anything done. And one of the solutions to the problem was send Graham to India for 2 weeks and see if we can get something done. I got more done in 12 days than we've done in 6 months because we were able to sit down with the team and I was able to guide them through, this is what we want to deliver, these are the pieces that, I'll pat myself on the back, but I'm
we actually got more coding done in 15 days than we'd done in 6 months. So there is a lot to be said for co-location. You just have to manage how that relationship works between the people that are off-site, wherever they are in the world, and the group that's here in Canada.
I'll also just add a comment, which is, and sometimes co-location is impossible, but even just building the rapport by having at least an introductory meeting face-to-face, shaking hands, and particularly over something that's not stressful, like coffee, lunch, dinner, drinks, something like that, where you actually build a rapport with people. I find then when you're on the go-to meeting, you know who the person is, and it's a lot easier to communicate. And then the other thing that I would also add is bridging the cultures, having the teams have multiple cultures in them, so then there's actually kind of a conduit to different cultures. We actually have a bunch of Spanish-speaking developers on our team, and you'll get on a call, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, well this is now Spanish, and I have no idea what's going on, right? But then we work with some folks in Mexico as well, and so I leverage the Spanish-speaking folks on my team to communicate a little bit better with the folks in Mexico and so on, right? So it's having kind of trying to figure out ways to build bridges also is a help in those things. Other questions? What else? Yeah. I'm gonna bring it on.
There's a very popular term in business intelligence called single version of truth. Probably everyone heard about it. But if you had an opportunity to work at both sides of the table, for example, at BI as well as the business unit, and then you'll probably know it's very difficult for you to actually getting a unified business rules across the entire organization. How is everyone on the panel coping with that kind of conflicts and the amount of negotiation between the business units, as well as applying these rules in your data warehouse? Because a lot of time what we notice is that salespeople, they have to go to multiple data warehouses for getting the kind of things that we wanted. We'll have to go for a composition data warehouse, to go for a subscriber analytics data warehouse, and many others, workforce management, performance metrics. And do you believe there's a single data warehouse can resolve all of these issues, or we should have multiple ones that being distributed across the entire organization to get things done? Thank you.
Well, who's had to deal with that kind of problem? All right, who wants to start this?
Go ahead, you guys. I'll go last.
I guess Graham sort of started living in it, and maybe we've corrected some of his mistakes. I'm not sure. No. So one way, which I think Graham may also answer this the same way as well too, is the first attribute you need to have as an individual is you're always right. Which sounds a little cheeky, but I think the approach I've taken is that we lived it for a few years, and maybe Ted gets frustrated with me sometimes, but I'll just have the impression that I will be always right on these kinds of scenarios, and don't necessarily always let people change your train of thought, and you have to come in owning and understanding those rules and moving forward with them. So I'm saying you can still be open to interpretation. I'm not saying you're completely stubborn, but you have to be confident in the rules that are in place. And the other cheeky piece probably is you have to be aware of the truth that you're looking for. So a lot of the times it'll be a situation which you're talking about, which is, say, a sales individual. Maybe a marketing individual will look at a sale as a different way as a sales individual would. And those two truths are different. It may be called a similar thing, but they are two sets of truths. So almost as an analyst or a user, you have to understand that there are different items, even though they may be called the same thing, which sounds probably confusing maybe, but you have to understand what it is that you're actually looking for as well too. So not everything is just simply one answer. There are different interpretations to it, even though they may look, I guess, fairly simple.
Just in the interest of time, guys,
Yep.
we should wrap up because I think it's a coffee break, and the scarcity of coffee around here, I don't want to miss the coffee.
Plus, we probably put everybody to sleep.
Thank you for coming.
No,
any
Should I answer the question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
any
go ahead, answer the
please.
It's a challenge. It's always a challenge. I totally agree with what Jeff said in that there's a lot of nuance in what truth means. I'd also say that the way to approach it is like just one thing at a time. You look at the thing, the initiative that you're working on, the deliverable, and you solve the problem for that, and then you move on to the next one. And you take your learnings there and you try to be consistent as you go forward, because you can't fix everything at once. And even if you could, your organization probably couldn't handle all that change in one bite. It's like I always use the analogy of making dinner. You know, if my wife and I are having dinner together and we fill the table with 15 main courses, we couldn't possibly eat all that food at once, even if it's there. It's not useful. So you just have to do one little thing at a time and solve it little by little.
Well, you know what? I actually disagree with that argument because I've been going back and forth between single version of the truth or multiple versions. But when you look at an organization, there are different pieces: building, operations, marketing, sales. They do define the customer differently because of their legitimate reasons. So I have no problem against having multiple definitions. But when you have, like, say within the marketing department, you have multiple definitions, that's not good. So as a department, you should be coming up with your own definition. And when you go back to your data warehousing solution, when you go back to your master data management solution, you can model that by having like wonderful data architecture. That's not a technical challenge. So I guess the end goal is that, so overall, you should be reducing the number of definitions over time. So say you are starting with 10 customer definitions. Next year, you are getting down to 5. That's perfectly fine. And usually the first step is around documenting those different definitions. Because usually in an organization, like people define that differently. And they have no understanding on, there is another similar definition. So if you can document all those definitions, then at least you can have a way to convert from one definition to another definition. So that's your interim solution. So the end goal is that, it's fine to have one single definition for marketing, one single definition for sales, and so on.
The evil word governance. I was at Teradata's partners in September, and one of the CTOs, Stephen Gross, we're talking about big data, and he's on a panel with a bunch of people, not unlike this one, only the people on the panel. Sorry guys, we're better. Other than Connor. Okay.
Thank you very much.
It's the last time I'm on one of your panels.
Well, I just mean that like they were all like dealing with big data every day. Okay, we're doing the same thing. Sorry. So anyway, different panel of people. Stephen Gross, one of their CTOs, says governance is the way we deal with this in big data and in traditional EDW. But you know what? Governance processes in this world are broken. So Teradata used to be the company that said single version of the truth, full stop, which meant everything went into the warehouse, everybody was governed by the warehouse, everybody extracted their data through the warehouse. Nobody at that Teradata conference said the word single version of the truth. They said, you've got big data, you've got your lake. Some people don't like the term lakes, people want to use the word swamp. But they've got this data thing, and then you figure out which pieces of that data get put into the EDW, and you figure out from there which pieces of that get into your analytics world, and you figure out which pieces of that get delivered as your KPIs. What's changed? We still have to deal with the life cycle of data. It came from a source, and today in the conversation they're talking about data wrangling, which is a fancy way of saying cleansing your data because nobody would cleanse it at source, which by the way is governance rule number 1, which another CTO at Teradata said, I can't believe after 30 years of doing data warehousing, we're still not cleansing data at source. So the answer to your question is what Connor said. One thing at a time, one KPI at a time. Where did the data come from? Can I trace its lineage all the way back to source? If I can, then the burden of proof is on me to do that, to prove to the end user that I've done the right thing and he's getting the data he single time. Burden of proof is with us. We have to say, I did the due diligence, I know where the data came from, here's the calculations I performed on it, here's the transformations that occurred, that's the result I got.
All right, thank you. Well, as you can tell, I think the panel could go on for quite a bit longer, but I would like to start by just thanking everybody in the interest of time. Have a word yet for Ritchie?
Bag of Doritos.
Bag of Doritos. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, thank you.